test?
A load test. A battery load test is the only true test for a battery. So we're going to do a load test on this one to kind of draw it down. And then we're going to check the charging system on this machine. But this battery charger is trying to charge it, and it wants to charge it at a higher rate than the battery already is. If I go to medium, we're at 12.8. When I go to medium, it just jumped up to 13.2. I've changed the jar. I moved the jar higher. I want more pressure. I want it to travel faster. My amperage didn't change a whole lot more than 10, even though my pressure changed. Partly because my battery is fairly charged. Partly because I didn't change it that much. If I keep changing it, I go to high. Now I'm at 14.8. 15.2. You notice it's going to keep going up. Looking at my amps, I'm now pushing 25 amps. I've got a battery designed for 12.6. I'm pushing 15.4 volts of pressure against it. It's gonna force amps to go into that battery anywhere it can. And it's going to keep trying to build it up and charge it up. And it's basically separating the negatives and the positives. I'm taking negative electrons, putting them on the positive side, and I'm building a wall with a lot of negatives on one side, on one plate, and positives on the other plate. And I'm going to keep forcing it to change and push that stuff that we talked about back into solution. If I go to boost, this says 16.2. My amperage has gone all the way up. I'm now pushing 40 amps of electricity into that battery. That battery cannot handle 40 amps for very long. In about 5 minutes, if I don't turn this thing down, the temperature of that battery will be hot enough that it'll be hard to hold my hand on it. That kind of temperature, the plates will start to warp and I can destroy that battery. So you only use this if I want to immediately get down here and try to start it. And as soon as I'm done, I would want to turn the rate back down. I don't want to leave it on here very long. This is at 16.3 right now, going into a battery design for 12.6.
Jump down that fast?
Right now I'm at 12.9. What am I at right now? My battery is actually charged to 12.7. Right now I'm on 6 volt. I'm on 6 volt low. What's going to happen if I try to charge this at 6 volt low? The battery's charge is designed that anytime the battery gets higher than 6 volts or about 7 volts, the battery charger quits pushing amperage. And my needle, if you look at it, says 0. Because what I did is I set the load. I set the jar lower than the battery. And so it's not going to discharge back into the battery charger, but the battery charger basically stops charging because the voltage I'm trying to apply is lower than the battery voltage. And that's how chargers shut themselves off. When the voltage evens out, the amperage will drop to 0 and it stops charging the battery. But on boost, when I'm charging 16 volts, it's going to keep forcing and forcing, and it will overcharge the battery. It will boil the water out, and it will damage that battery. So don't do that. If I'm going to jump start this thing, what terminal do I put on first on the battery, the jumper cables?
Positive.
Positive. And which one do I put second? And where do I put it? I put the positive on, then I put the negative on, and I put it on the block. What happens if I put the negative on first and then the positive onto the battery? It's going to blow up. If I'm going to put both of them on the battery, does it matter which one I put on first? No. The only reason we put the negative on second is because we're not putting it on the battery, we're completing it. And electricity has to be in a circle. If there's not a circle, there's no flow of electricity. And so what I'm doing when I put the final cable on, there's 4 cables you're going to put on, the final cable makes the full circle. And it's that final cable that I do not want near the hydrogen gas on the battery. And that's the one that we're going to put on a block. If you feel there's no other options but to put both cables, all 4 cables on batteries, it doesn't matter whether you put positive on first or negative on first. The last terminal to be connected will spark. If there is hydrogen gas, there is that potential to blow up. So most people, they get confused as to which terminal do I put on last. The last one needs to be away from the battery. That's what you want to do. And you can't put the positive away from the battery very easy. There's only two places you can put the positive. And that's going to be on the battery itself, or if you follow the lead, you could come down to the starter on this side over here, find the end of it, you could stick it right on the bolt on the end of the starter. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's still positive, it's still 12 volts. I could actually apply this battery charger, hook it down here, stick the ground over on this side on the block, and I could charge my battery because I'm still connected to the battery. So it doesn't matter where you put it. What's that?
Now you tell the starter's bad, just hook it to the starter.
You could. What it would tell you is if your terminal to your battery is bad. It's not going to tell you your battery's bad.